Hello and welcome. I am in my last day here in beautiful Upper Valley, Vermont. I've been spending 2 weeks here with my sister, and it's been amazing with the fall leaves, but the temperature has chilled and the wind has blown all the beautiful leaves off the the hundreds and thousands of trees. And so it's time for me to go back home to warm Southern California. But not before I have one last episode of Pay Attention. So, welcome to this last episode here in Vermont. And I'm really excited about today's guest. For those of you who know my journey, I started off from a low point at age 34, where I just vowed to find better because I knew there had to be better. I didn't even know what I was looking for, but I had a belief that there was better. And, it took me from my hometown in the Black Hills of South Dakota to Minneapolis, to greater New York, to across to San Francisco, all while keeping up with my architectural career, raising my two children, being a single mom. And it was a bit by bit uncovering. And about 10 years into my 20-year journey, I realized what I was looking for. And that was that awareness, that enlightenment, that awakening. And it took me into neuroscience and psychology and Buddhism and spirituality. And it was just a beautiful kind of slow uncovering. And along the way, I met amazing people. And you can say by chance, I met today's guest, but I don't think anything's by chance. And when he told me his story, similar about kind of uncovering who you are, what your true nature is, what your place here in the world, in the universe, how we all truly exist. I was like, what? Because I just spent 20 years trying to figure this out. So welcome to Vince Bellitto. Is that right? What's that?
Bellito.
Bellito. Oh, because I always go by Vince. Sometimes I call him Saint Vince, Saint Vince or Gangster Vince or, Invincible, as we're going to hear today. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Happy to be here, Holly.
Yeah. It was such a joy to meet you and to hear your story and to realize that, kind of validate one of the things that I really believe is that when you really want to try to find your true nature, your path, and try to find out what you're really doing here, and you believe that you can, that path is available to you. But what I really love is that even though our paths were so different, they kind of, we came to the same conclusions. Because I think that all paths, will lead you to the same simple truths about how the life is. So if you would, Vince, take a little bit of time and share your story, I'm sure our listeners would love to hear it.
Thank you, Holly. And it's been a wonderful pleasure getting to know you. It's been very rich having conversation with you. Your inquiries with me, the opportunities to listen to your sharing, your background, your discoveries, and then allowing me to do the same with you has been very mutually beneficial and enlivening. So I'm very grateful for who you are and what you're committed to being and creating and providing people in the world with. So it's really awesome to be here. And I think you titled this Self-Destruction to Service, Vince's Rise from Victim to Invincible, I think is what we came up with.
That's what we came up with. And you guys are all going to love this story. And it's been a blessing also to have you be part of my journey. So yes, let's hear about your journey from
self-destruction. Yeah. So you came up with that, and I think it's really it's very well fitting. So currently I'm operating as a coach, transformational coach, trauma-informed coach and coach trainer. And, I got into this world because of that self-destruction piece that was running so rampantly in my life, and takes me all the way back to, I'll start at 1999. That's when I found myself waking up on a sidewalk, completely delusional. My mind was not functioning properly. I started vomiting blood, and I looked in front of me. There were people, but I couldn't even comprehend what people were for a few moments.
Wow.
My brain started to click together, and they were talking, but nothing was registering. And when I reflect on that moment, it was like, I imagine how babies might experience the world before they have cognitive awareness and development. Okay. Because it was like, wah, 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 and there was objects, and there was like nothing registered. And then little by little, like, I got my mind back, and I started vomiting blood, and they were like, "Are you okay? Like, you just, had no heartbeat. You just overdosed. You've been, using too much drugs." Like the medics were telling me all this. My friend was telling me this, and they took me to the hospital, and I'm handcuffed in the bed of the hospital because that was a violation of my probation to be using drugs. And so I was on probation at the time for 2 drug charges the year prior. And I finally got that. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to run my life. Actually, this hard, tough gangster image was shattered. I'm not as tough and smart as I thought I was.
Mm-hmm.
I also didn't know what would have happened if I didn't wake up from that overdose. They said I had no heartbeat. I had no pulse. Some lady had stopped. My friend had pulled me out of the car, and she stopped to check my pulse. And so that freaked me out. Like, I just remember sitting in that bed just thinking like, holy crap, I could not be here right now. And I wouldn't even know that I'm not here right now. And it was that idea specifically that messed up my soul. I mean, it really troubled me. And it got me hungry to figure out if there's more to life or life beyond the grave or anything like that, because I was like, man, like, this is scary and I'm out of control and I don't know what I'm doing. And it was a very humbling moment. And that's when I began to inquire in my heart. I just began to inquire into greater possibilities and this quest to understand, like, what is the real meaning and purpose of life? And is there life after or beyond death? Because I didn't have those stories, that the people had told about angels and meeting God or going to heaven and being sent back to earth. Like, I had heard stuff like that. I'm like, that didn't happen to me. It was nothing. And so frightening it was. I quickly began to turn my life around. I cut off all my associations, started spending time in nature just to figure myself out, went to the library because I'm like, I need new ideas. And I know that the people I hang out with are not giving me good ideas. And I made this radical turnaround, started getting off drugs pretty quickly. And that was really leading me to, I found Zen Buddhist meditation. In fact, I got this little painting up here of the Zen Buddha. And I'm sitting there contemplating life, my existence, watching my breath. And I began to become intimate with my inner world. I began to have flashbacks of my childhood and realized that it was these memories of pain and trauma of my earlier years that were really underlying a lot of my activity. For example, my stepdad, who appeared in my life at the age of 10, started beating my mother physically, very violently. And that was a real catalyst. That was where the self-destruction really, really began. Mm-hmm. I would say I was born into self-destruction. I had a really rough family upbringing even before that. But this is where it really just went up multiple levels. And witnessing that, feeling like I wasn't adequate to protect my mother. I didn't have the strength or the power. Right. There was a deep insecurity, a sense of inferiority. And I was a pretty badass kid. I mean, I was already a martial artist. I had been in a number of fights. I was a pretty dominant leader type and kicked ass as a young kid in martial arts and everything. But so I had this image, this persona of myself that I was supposed to be tough. And all of a sudden I felt weaker than weak itself. And I was like horrified. I felt ashamed. There was a sense of condemnation and wrong. And I felt like a coward, or interpreted myself as a coward. And I didn't want anyone to ever know about that. And it just ate me up inside. And so that was like, there was like a seed planted, a really dark, nasty seed in that moment. And from there, eventually found myself getting involved with gangs because I was getting troubled in school and I wanted power, I wanted strength because I really felt weak inside. So it was a way of compensating. And that led into drugs and crime. And, my dream was to be a mafia kingpin. That was like my big goal.
Gangster Vince. Yeah.
Yeah. So when that became my chosen identity, and I have this thing: identity, procedure, purpose, procedure, destiny. So my purpose became crime and drug dealing and everything else, and started partying really hard with drugs, as well as delivering and serving people drugs and selling drugs. And it just started to get to me after about 11 years, from 10 years old to 21. It was in 99 that I overdosed. And it was like, this is too much. So I saw the death sentence that pretty much came upon me at the age of 10 reach its fulfillment in the year 1999. That's when I was like, gosh, I did this to me. I didn't understand any better when I was younger, but I could see that my thoughts, my feelings, the unprocessed emotions, like that was what was underlying all of this activity. Being a gangster, being a tough guy, being in control, dominating other people, taking advantage of other people, gave me a way to escape the gnawing sense of inferiority that I was
Of
feeling.
course, of course. Yeah, trying to cover that up. And, when you first faced it, you didn't want it, right? And we do whatever we can to avoid it. So,
Yeah, it was agonizing. Actually, I remember almost committing suicide. I had a knife to my neck because the memories were so intense and there was a lot of volatility in my body. And my body was like convulsing, and it was like there was so much energy, there was so much anger, suppressed anger and rage that I could not express to my stepdad because of what was happening, because he was just so much bigger and he was a very violent dude. He beat up friends. He broke his best friend's rib on my mother and his wedding day. They got into a fight. They were all drunk, and
oh my God.
he was just such a tough guy. But on the other side of it, he actually did love me and care about me. So, but when they were drinking, it was like a horrific hell in the home. And for years, I was in the listening of that, always waiting to see if my mother was going to get hurt in the back room, like being on edge for so many years. Like it affected the development of my nervous system, my brain, and my body. And now I had to spend the next 20 some years of my life up till even today, still processing, completing that. Fortunately, all of that has given me the ability to work with people in a way that is quite miraculous. If it wasn't for all that profound pain and suffering that I went through, and then my intense investigation in what's going on and doing whatever needed to be done to get complete with it, I wouldn't be able to help people the way that I am today. So there's like a kind of a balancing that's taken place up to this point in my time in my life.
Of course. And I imagine there are some listeners out there that can relate more closely to your story than I can, because mine was the complete kind of opposite. Just, everything. I ticked all the boxes of everything you're supposed to want, but still found, that piece missing. But you had a moment when it all kind of came clear to you. Can you describe that moment?
Yeah, it was a year later from 1999, and I had been about a year or so. I got very intentional about seeking this thing called absolute truth. I was also looking for enlightenment, nirvana, satori, like whatever the Hindu, Buddhist perspective was. I was anti-Christian, not into the Bible, was studying any other religion, spiritual perspective or whatever. But these ideas were in me. I read the Celestine prophecy, the idea of having a divine encounter to break free from the four dramas, the way we steal energy from each other. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. I need that thing. So I got like really fixated on this
goal.
Have
that. I'll take that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I need one of those divine encounter things. So I was really...
That's the power of intention, right?
Very intentional. I'm like, I've always been like that since I was little. I just had this new objective. So I was like, I really want this experience. So in the year 2000, there was a day that came where I was very intentional about encountering God if God was real. Like I wasn't willing to believe anything. I wanted to know everything by direct experience. I've always been kind of a scientific kind of guy. I want to know how does it work and show me, don't tell me.
I was just gonna say that.
Like I need to see it to believe it. But I investigate. I'm not like a skeptic or pessimistic and just kind of write things off. I will look into it and I will do the due diligence, So I did, and come down my stairs this day, and a bunch of other things happened prior to this, but I felt this giddy, childlike joy and pleasure through the core of my being. It was almost like butterflies, but in a very pleasant way. It was just super pleasant butterflies. Like, oh my God, I'm going to meet God. And I remember coming down the stairs and I was turning left, like as if God was tapping me on my shoulder or on my right side. I'm turning around and I'm like, oh, and I'm walking down the stairs and I felt that I'm looking up, like, where's this? And as soon as I got to the bottom of the stairs, it was a sudden inversion of my awareness. And I'm sure that all the countless hours of meditating and sitting still and just being with the inner world permitted this to happen. The quieting of my mind, the relaxing of my body and nervous system. I got to a place of such stillness that it allowed my intention to be fulfilled. And what happened was I remember just not seeing outward anymore. And it was like suddenly like my eyes just started, like I was looking inward, like through my nervous system. And there was all this light that just opened up inside of me. And I fell to my knees and I said the words, Jesus Christ. And it wasn't just like an exclamation. It was like an instant recognition that this Jesus Christ name is not a historical figure, but is like a cosmic presence of being. And so the name and I didn't know anything about really too much about Christianity and culture at the time, but this Jesus Christ realization was this integrity and wholeness and purity and innocence of my own being at the core, that I began this way. and that I end this way. And not just me, but it was an instant recognition that every human being is this very same substance that I was now face to face and being to being with.
Right. I freaking love that. I love that. I wouldn't say I'm jealous because I so appreciate my journey and I'm so grateful to be here today. But wow, I don't even know if I would have known what to do with that.
I didn't either, but I think like the way I like to say it is I think it's a testament of how lost I was and how desperate I was. I think I needed something so astonishing.
Yeah,
because the background I'm coming from was just so ridiculous and so hurtful.
Yeah,
but so that astonishing moment, it just changed everything for me. It was like now I was immature. I had the experience. I had this all-knowing sense of like eternity. It was like,
You're 21, right?
21. I know what we are. I know where we come from. I know how it all ends. I know how everything comes into existence. I saw all the timelines of hell and heaven all woven together, and it doesn't matter. Hell or heaven doesn't matter because the source of all of that is grander. And I was that source. We are that source. And this was just an instant knowing. And it was so profound that all I could say when I got out of this, and I'm like, I started talking to people. I'm like, we're all God. And people thought, and it was so clear to me, but nobody got it.
There's a moment during my first divorce, unfortunately, when I said, I am God, you're God, we're all God. And so my ex-husband's like, yeah, she thinks she's God, right? It doesn't go well, right? But I do love how that's a testament to the power of intention. But I also love that, it took me a long time and I'm fine with that. But you had that experience and you could just to be able to understand it. And because it's so foreign to us, most people have never heard of it. We've heard of religions, obviously even Buddhism, spirituality, but this idea that we are at once everything and that there's a million different versions going on and that this life is consciousness experiencing, being able to touch and feel and smell. But for you to understand that in that instance, I just love that. And it just blows me away. So
thank you for that.
Yeah. So from there, you had to unravel, right? You had to unravel all you had learned or, tell us.
I wasn't instantly special or healed or, totally transformed. I mean, I had a recognition of the truth of who I am and what we all really are, but that did not exonerate me from the need to work through my body mind. And I didn't have all these distinctions that I do today, but, I still had to deal with previous trauma in my body, like the body, the emotions, the thoughts, the realm that I play in today that I help people integrate within themselves so that they can experience the presence of divinity. This body is a vessel for divinity. No single person is God alone. And I think that's where it gets kind of conflicting. It's like, nobody can just say I'm God and that be legit, because the God that I speak of is the God that is substance and source to all that's manifest and beyond that.
Right.
And I'm aware of that. And yet we in the body are meant to come face to face with that reality. Yes. And that's supposed to happen in this lifetime. And there's a lot of teachings that I think mislead people to expect that to happen after death or beyond the grave. Mm-hmm. And I am a completely different attitude towards that. It's now and here.
That's right.
And it's by direct experience. And so I'm very adamant about, I have concepts and I have structure in my language to help people navigate what I'm speaking about. But my great skill is the ability to give people the experience for themselves, because that always trumps everything. People can believe anything they want to believe, and it doesn't mean it's necessarily true. And even if you say, I believe in God, that's still not a realization of the fact. And so I'm interested in providing people with the access to a realization. And so I've spent, since that day, 24 years change now almost, helping people discover that and learning ways that I could make that happen in a faster, gentler way. The trauma-informed coaching is the result of realizing, oh yeah, people are so stuck. The awareness they fundamentally are is so stuck in the body because of unresolved trauma and emotions and mental conflicts that without embracing and integrating all of those pieces, there's no freedom and flow. There's no possibility for the awareness to be released to realize itself as awareness, which is what I would call enlightenment.
Right, which is exactly right. We are so familiar with this, and I love what you say. No one
Yeah.
person can say they're God, but this is the manifestation, like you said, of God,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
these are experiences of God. Every one of us is an experience of God, and I
Exactly.
agree with you. The only way to really understand it and to become familiar with it is to spend time becoming familiar with it, finding that clarity of mind, finding that space between I talk about, unraveling your neural net of ego and identity and finding that clarity of space in between. But
Mm.
for me, like I said, it was just it was a step by step. But for you, obviously, it was different. And now you coach people. I know you also have programs to coach people grow their business and a lot of other things. But really, now you're in service of others. So talk about that for a little bit. It's something that I've just recently been kind of opening my heart to, opening this flow of connection that we all
Mm.
have. And I do find that being in service of life or God or whatever you want to call it in every moment that is presented to you is really what we're here to do in that evolution. And in doing that evolution of who you are and what this is and what's happening comes to light. We don't have to figure it out in the brain. It all comes to light when we open up, and I think service to others is a real game changer for that.
It's a necessity. The only way we're ever going to realize the truth of who we are is when we get beyond the individual.
Right.
And I mean, what I'm about to say is not going to be easy for most people to digest, but the reality is the individual existence is extremely illusory.
Mm-hmm.
It exists as a reality only because of a deeply held conviction that's
Right.
entrenched and imposed upon us from day one. Like we're born
Right.
into a parenthood that, in their best interest and with love and well meaning, I'm sure they're defining you as an individual.
Right.
And it's not that there isn't individual parts, but it's so overemphasized
That's
that
right.
we sense this separation, this isolated individualistic self that is just an unreality. It literally is not even real, but it's
Mm-hmm.
just believed to be so deeply that that's most people's existence. And that's why people struggle and suffer. Because like, if you look at the body, there's individual blood cells, but those blood cells have no self-existence apart from the whole system they belong to. And
Right.
so that's the same thing as a human. Humans don't exist apart from a bigger system of being, and
Right.
being is fundamental. But most of us are really, there's a part of the brain called the default mode network. And it's the area of the brain responsible for individual sense, a self sense. It's the part of the brain where we would define ego to be located.
Mm-hmm.
And most people tend to operate from that. And what we find in people who meditate deeply or have these profound experiences through psychedelics, and when they
Right.
measure brain activity, the default mode network is actually decreased in its activity, and the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the brain becomes activated and actualized, and there's
Right.
left and right brain communication to a higher degree. And so what I would say is happening in that space is that a greater degree of awareness is taking place.
Yes.
That the mental, emotional, somatic filters are subdued enough that the pure awareness and pure being that is what you really are, that everyone and everything in the universe is, can be encountered directly by itself, through itself.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep. Yep. I love your words. I love the way you explain all of this. In simpler terms, it's like looking at yourself in the mirror, only seeing yourself, but then, stepping back and seeing the mirror, right? This is a
That's right.
reflection. This is,
Right.
yeah, the quantum,
When you put two mirrors together, what happens? That
the,
infinity
the
effect, right?
affinity,
Like the
right.
infinite, like
That's right.
reflexivity, right? It's
That's
like
right. And
that.
that's actually, yeah.
That's enlightenment.
And like you said, in quantum physics, you go down to the molecule and the protons and neutrons, and even there, it's all waves. It's all just disturbances that have somehow come together to create you and I in this moment, and this computer, and in this podcast. And that understanding, maybe you get it, but I haven't gotten there yet, or maybe I'll. It's described as beyond words, but that's a miracle. And it's a miracle that we're here every day and that we're experiencing what we're experiencing every day,
Mm.
which is why being in service to the miracle of life or God or whatever you want to call it is so much in harmony. And I love when you talked about finding that clarity to experience the bigger part of who you are. And that's exactly right. If you're so focused, uber focused on Holly and I'm an architect, you can't see beyond it.
Yeah.
So it's just looking beyond it. Or, and kind of, I've heard it described as, think of your mind as a rock, right? So just stop thinking for a while and absorb into your heart, right? And just stay there as long as you can to start to open up
Mm.
that bigger part of you. So
Yeah, beautiful. And, like Jesus said, whoever seeks to gain his life in this world is going to lose it. And whoever
yeah,
is willing to lose his life in this world for my sake, meaning he is the representative universality of being.
right.
So he is our image of invincibility,
Invincibility.
cosmic immortality that transcends the individual life. When we're willing to lose the life that we hold on to so dearly and we stop
To die, to be
pursuing.
reborn. Isn't that what he said?
Yeah. But even that pursuit for some people is, even religion, right? It can be a pursuit to perpetuate
Yes,
egocentric
that's right.
viewpoints.
That's
The,
right.
the pursuit
Spirituality
of
itself can be
enlightenment,
ego. Yeah.
the belief in a life after death, the belief in reincarnation. These are all beliefs that people really swear by, and they'll tell you
Right.
stories about it. And and it's not that I'm saying, I'm going to just be straight. I have to come out and be straight.
All good.
So imagination is filled with possibilities, but the thing is, these are all idols. And so I'm not interested in the games that the mind can play.
Right.
I'm not even interested in the games the physical universe can play. What I'm interested in revealing to people is the source of and the substance of life itself. And that transcends the objects. It transcends incarnation, reincarnation. It was before you were born, and it will be when you are not alive. So in other words, what you are has no birth, has no death.
That's
and
right.
This is something that's not even in the conversation from most spiritual religious perspectives
That's
at
true.
all.
That's
But
true.
it's my own encounter with what is truth, absolute truth.
Yeah, and like I said, it everything points back to it, because I, on my 20-year journey across the country and through everything, came to the same conclusions. And unfortunately for most people, it is death upon death that they realize this, because this stops existing. And then I remember when my father died, and I'm looking down at his body, and he, there's something up here going, "What are you doing?" That energy never dies, right? That flow never dies. So in helping people to realize this greater part of themselves, it's about awakening to it before you die, right?
Awakening or dying before you die.
Yeah, dying the
there's
ego.
many ways you can say it, but even awakening implies that it's somewhere other than right now, or even right here, just as this is.
Awareness.
So I guess what I like to say is, there really is nowhere to get to.
Right.
There's nothing to change about this moment.
It is
what it is,
There's
and
just
it's
to be,
gonna
right?
be what it is.
That's right.
Even your unawareness of the whole is perfectly part of what is meant to be.
Everything's showing up.
Mm-hmm. All pursuits, all efforts and striving, it all that further enforces the conviction that I don't know what's really so. Only when we give up our effort to control, change, fix, modify, adjust, find, seek, or anything, which is very difficult for a human.
Yeah.
Because our existence is, in the ego sense, is all about surviving pain and getting away from the fearful thing.
Pushing things away, pulling them towards you, getting what you need.
So it's truly a death that is the access to life.
It is.
And it's a giving up of the need to be in control, the need to figure it out. So basically when people work with me, what gives them so much freedom is that I help put them to rest.
It's so interesting. Such an interesting way to end, because you are speaking to the choir here. Vince, and thank you so much for coming on today. You said you wanted to end with just a little exercise
Yeah.
before we conclude.
Right in the vein of everything we're connecting on right now.
Excellent. Take it away. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So I'll just create a little guided experiment process with the word, and I invite you and everyone to simply close the eyes and feel into the body, and love to start by becoming present to the body. Just noticing the body as it is. What feelings are present, what sensations are present, where they are present. And observing the breath as well. Just observing the process of breathing, not doing breathing, not trying to take a breath, but letting go of the effort to do anything for a few moments as best as possible. And notice how it feels to really be with the body as it is, and to gently release the effort to do anything or be something other than what you already are in this moment. How does it feel to simply be as you are, with all sensations, with every thought, coming and going, without resisting, or if there is resistance, allowing the resistance to be part of this moment that's unfolding through space and through time? And notice how it doesn't require anything of you to exist. You're already here, sustained as a conscious awareness, and you don't have to do this. Can you allow the mind and the body to simply be as they are, to observe, to witness, and to let everything flow through the awareness that is your fundamental being? Can you simply observe the thoughts, witness the mind, feel the body, and allow the feelings to come, the feelings to go? Good. Let's breathe together through the nose. Nice deep breath in. And then through the mouth out. Good. Going to do that again. Nose in. Mouth out. Good. Again through the nose. And mouth out. Beautiful. And on this breath, we're going to breathe in nice and deep through the nose and hold the breath at the top. And just hold that breath in. Relax the body. Swallow your saliva, and let's observe the saliva. Just pay attention to the saliva run down to the belly. Keep holding the breath gently. Feel that fullness. Maybe you can feel your heartbeat. Relax a little more. Keep holding the breath gently. Lips in no pinhole. And slowly release that air. Allow yourself to let go. Allow yourself to simply be. Notice the freedom that you already are. Nowhere to get to. Nothing to do. Simply be. One whole, complete presence of awareness. So good. And I'll complete with that. And would love to check in since I'm with you here, Holly. What are you noticing? What are you present to?
Just the clarity. I mean, I hear the road noise. I hear my heart beating. I hear, feel myself sitting in the seat, and this bit of, how my hands feel touching each other. Just the awareness of kind of everything around me, and
Beautiful.
yeah, it's good.
All right. Anything else going on in your body, mind that you can be aware of?
Just the space, the open space.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Hold, like you said, nothing getting taught, everything moving through.
Beautiful. Let's just allow that to be for another moment more. Simply being here, witnessing, allowing, being. So good. Very much enjoy this with you.
Well, thank you, Invincible. You're now calling your website Invincible. Your work, the Invincible Kingdom, is it?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, this has been, we could go on talking forever. So I think we'll have to have you back at some point.
Love
But
that.
thank you.
Appreciate you.
Yes. And thank you for that. That was very calming and opening. And, hopefully our listeners enjoyed it as well. So thank you very much. I appreciate you sharing your story. I love that, these conclusions that you and I both came to with such different journeys. So, and I hope the listeners, I hope it was very helpful to you as well. And please join me for another episode of Paying Attention down the road when I'll be out of the beautiful hills of Vermont and back in Southern California. So thank you, Vince, and thank you, everyone.
Bless you, Holly. Thank
Bless
you.
you.